Quote, while the learners of the interactive group reported significantly higher score for perceived comprehension, in contrast to video and text-based groups, the participants in the video groups were as confident about their knowledge as those in the interactive group. This finding suggests that educational videos may lead learners to develop overconfidence about the subject matter. In contrast, interactivity provides an opportunity for learners to get their hands dirty by manipulating the input and directly interacting with the algorithms, which in turn aligns learners' perceived comprehension with confidence, end quote. Now, this is really important to consider. So it's great that videos might be able to help improve confidence with learning or understanding something, but the interactivity actually made it so that they were able to apply their understanding in some way and maybe get some feedback in terms of what worked and what did not work, depending on what kind of feedback you get from the platform. Again, it's one thing to be able to understand something, and it's a completely different thing to be able to actually apply that understanding consistently. Now, what does this mean for educators? So for myself, what I really tried to focus on was maybe introducing a concept at the beginning of a class in the first 5 minutes out of a 40-minute period at most. And then the rest of the time was actually students being able to apply that understanding in their own projects or explore it in different ways. So if everybody happened to be working on the exact same thing, which was a very rare circumstance in the classes that I work with, because everybody was able to pick a number of different projects with a number of different programming languages and platforms, etc., and apply it in a meaningful way. But in the few instances where students were all working on the exact same thing, I would spend some time introducing an idea, and then that would take up a very small percentage of the time. The rest of the time would be spent applying that and me working with students one-on-one, coaching them, or having their peers coach each other. Now, if this had been flipped, this would have maybe looked like 35 minutes of video-based lecture or me at the front of the room talking about things in 5 minutes of application. While that time spent learning from an expert, whether it's from a video, from a teacher, or whatever, may have developed some sense of confidence of understanding that subject area, the actual application of that understanding is a very small percentage of time. So I've talked about in other podcasts, if we think of music or language or any kind of skill or understanding, you need to be able to actually practice it to improve at it and apply it in different contexts, to constantly look at a concept or practice from many different angles and many different perspectives to better understand how to use it and modify it in different scenarios. So for example, if you're learning something like a for loop, if you only go and create one for loop and don't understand how it works in other programs and other contexts, other scenarios, etc., you're going to have a very narrow understanding and not understand how to use it in many different scenarios, or when to use it in comparison to a while loop or something else. How much time you actually spend exploring those different scenarios as opposed to just learning the concept itself will have a direct impact on how good you are at that. It's the same thing with learning a language or an instrument or a sport or whatever. You can't just watch videos of people teaching you how to do it. You actually need to do it. So a recommendation that I might give is that while students might have an increased sense of confidence with learning something from a lecture or a video or whatever, you need to actually really think through how much time are we actually spending applying that understanding, because that will have an impact on learning. This excerpt of the CSK8 podcast was from episode 185, which is titled Mind the Gap, the Illusion of Skill Acquisition in Computational Thinking.